And I hope you're not feeling sleepy at all, because we are going to wake you up now. Okay, and thank you for being here, right? Today's conversation is part of the India Water Foundation Conclave, right? And BBC Media Action is the knowledge partner. I represent BBC Media Action here. I am Soma Katiyar, the Executive Creative Director. And over the next 45 minutes, right, we will explore what water bankruptcy looks like, right? On ground, with communities, and from different angles in agriculture, farming, people, and innovation also, right? And with me are these three delightful individuals over here who have been marvelous, who have arrived on time, have been around for a while, and are here to join the conversation. So I'll begin with Manjusha first. So Manjusha Manchala is an urban environment planning public professional, and she's also the founder of Urban Forge Labs. And she works in water circularity. She works with startups and innovation, and we'll hear more from her. Welcome, Manjusha. Next is Debaranjan Pujahari, right next to me. He's the lead agriculture and water practices at Sattva Consultancy. He's an accomplished development professional with almost 18 years of experience, and having worked in his expertise lies in agriculture, data, farming, and how water is being looked and used in that sector. And Swapnil Chaturvedi, he is the director, programs WaterAid. He's a serial social entrepreneur and an award-winning impact leader. And at WaterAid, his work is largely around water and communities, and how infrastructure and all of these are coming and cusping together. So thank you all for being here. And so before we start all of this, and I promised you कि आपको नींद नहीं आएगी, so what we will do is, I want you to do one small exercise, okay? So when आपको आँख बंद करनी है पर सोना नहीं है, all right? So I want you to all shut your eyes, and when I say the word water bankruptcy, okay? Shut your eyes and imagine, and tell me, after shutting your eyes, imagine what is the visual. What do you imagine when the word water bankruptcy is said? आँख खोल के भी imagine कर सकते हैं, पर आँख बंद करके शायद ज़्यादा vivid होता है. And this is for the panelists also, huh? We all are supposed to shut our eyes. I've also shut my eyes. Give it 30 seconds, and we are going to be back in the room. Okay? Are we good to be back? Will somebody in the audience would like to say what did they imagine when the word water bankruptcy was being said?
Okay. I didn't imagine, but I saw that advertisement, which is shot in Kutch, with Kutch women, the dry land and their empty buckets.
Right.
I saw this in man-made famine. We have depleted our resources so bad that the rivers which are flowing, I see the cracked beds, river beds, where and there's people, kids digging the soil just to get some moisture.
Right.
And that was in my head when you said water bankruptcy.
Anybody else? Somebody here?
The border is running dry actually.
Yeah?
Dr. Robert, Yamuna disappearing.
Huh?
Wow.
Yamuna disappearing, absolutely.
अगर पहाड़ की बात करें, पहाड़ के कटेक्स में ये देख रहे हैं कि जैसे महिलाएं वहाँ पे स्कूल हुई हैं, बंडा लेके चल रही हैं, धारे में लंबी लाइनें लगी हुई हैं, पानी नहीं है, चारों तरफ कुल जानवर तड़प रहे हैं, महिलाएं पानी के लिए इधर से उधर भाग रही हैं, तो वो सिचुएशन ये पहाड़ों में
बिल्कुल, मतलब, yeah?
Kind of a black and white film.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the future, and what have we kept for our future? No water, and children trying to open taps and trying to even collect their one drop of water.
Yeah. Anybody else? For those who have just walked in, I had asked this question that you shut your eyes and imagine when I say the word water bankruptcy, what image comes to your head?
To me, I mean, soil with cracks.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Ma'am, I think you were saying.
It's a very common image, but particularly the thing is dry soil, no green anywhere, brown, cracks, and kids with empty plastic bottles somehow.
Right. So I'll come to the panelists now, because now let's look at we'll start with you, Swapnil. What is that image that came to your mind? And if you like to elaborate a little bit about that.
So I went ahead to 2028. We have provided tap in every house. That's when JJM ends. But I saw people opening taps and nothing coming out. So that, all the check dams are dry. Nothing is coming out of taps. Wells are dry. And people don't know what to do. So that's what came into my mind. Yeah.
Manjusha?
So I had a first-hand experience during my college days. One of my studies was in Anantapur districts, which is a semi-arid region. Like the way how Rajasthan deserts are, it's a very similar kind of a situation. Second to Rajasthan, it's Anantapur in Andhra Pradesh. So a lot of administrators have tried to bring some water around, but then a lot of investments have happened there just to identify that there is no water when they dig for bore wells. So that's a scenario where you invest a lot of money, lot of emotions of public are in stake, agriculture productivity is in stake, and everything comes at a cost. So that's when that is a time where we are still talking about water stress, water scarcity, or day zero concepts. But now we are entering into an era where water bankruptcy is being spoken about. And we eventually doesn't even know what kind of terminologies or what kind of situations we will be getting into after a decade. So it haunts me that way, water drying up, and as Sir was telling, if it doesn't have water in the morning, so I can't even imagine how the survival of the fittest, so-called human, without water. So that's a scary part which we're all discussing today.
That's a very vivid picture.
Yeah.
Debaranjan.
So I went back to 2013. This is the time when I was working in Barmer for the Cane Energy program. And I stayed there for almost like 1.5 years. It's a long program, but I was there and then I shifted to another program. I clearly recall, I think, two scenarios came to mind. One scenario was the northern part of Barmer. Whoever is seen, there are two parts. One is southern, which adjacent to like Gujarat side, and which is jeera and other type of crops are grown. Northern part is purely, I think, dry land. It's only the bajra, single crop, completely rain-fed farming. So survival on a single crop, and you are trying to demonstrate an economic prosperity of the farmer. So such a challenging phenomenon. One other thing came to mind, same picturization. While I'm thinking of agriculture, I realized at that time, for the first time I saw people were bringing water on camel. And there was a fee attached to that, and the camels were coming from 15 kilometers.
Wow.
So there is a structure, but लोगों को पानी भी नहीं मिलता था वहाँ पे. So this is 2013. Forget about the bankruptcies today and the future. 2013, people in Barmer, city के like district headquarters से it should be like not more than like 10 kilometers, and people were carrying water for the drinking purpose. So this is where I think the bankruptcy was visible from there. And the southern part, if you go, there is water, but the water is largely groundwater to grow a commercial crop, because there is money. There is a market present to Unjha, which is 50 kilometers away in Gujarat. People are extracting water through the groundwater because I know that I'll grow 100 rupees of jeera.
Yeah.
So three dynamics, right? One, someone is struggling to grow one crop, कुछ तो हो जाए, बाजरा थोड़ा आ जाएगा तो खा लेंगे. Second is someone is having again this stress region, but doing groundwater, चलो मुझे तो commercial crop करना है किसी तरह से. I do not know what sort of like कितना water, no one asks me to pay I'm just doing extra water from the withdrawal process. And third, a women member feeding her children, cooking something by like carrying, I do not recall the money, there is a per liter, so there is a charge to that. Purchasing water in 2013, 8 kilometers from the district court. So this situation is pretty much, I think, the outcome of like bankruptcy. Like, you're withdrawing much more than I think in your deposits today. So yeah.
Totally, and I think there's an interesting thing. If you all notice, when we asked you what did you imagine, you did not imagine numbers, you did not imagine data, you imagined a lived experience, whether something that you would have seen somewhere or something that you are imagining could happen in the near future. And the thing with why when we were putting this thing together, that bankruptcy, why do we want to talk about bankruptcy to resilience? Because if you all have seen that UN has now said that, gone is the time when it was water stress. It is a time when our consumption is way higher than what nature can fill back, right? What nature can, fill in for the amount of consumption we are doing. So in that, and if you hold this thought, and this is the spine of our conversation today, कि visuals याद है आपको, आपने सोचा एक lived experience, and that's what it is. These are not just images. These are about communities. These are our everyday reality. It is our lived experiences, and therefore water bankruptcy is just not a statistic. It is just not a thing. It is actually what people feel, what people do, how people relate to it, how people are affected, and therefore what can be the mitigation? How can people understand? What can we do? We are in water bankruptcy. I mean, no longer you can say ki nahi, it's still there. You are at a stage where I think the need for creating a new norm around, a new behavior around how we relate to water has to change, because water is something very personal, right? We all have a relationship with water. We all have a memory with water. If I were to ask you about your one childhood memory of water, you will all go back to something. Maybe it is somewhere जहाँ कहीं पे किसी गांव में कहीं पे नदी के किनारे, पोखर के किनारे, या पानी के गुब्बारों से आपने बचपन में होली खेली थी. अभी होली गई, right? We all have wasted a lot of water during Holi, right? So these are things. These are the experiences, and solving it is not possible only with infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
We need probably a very different tool, and that's what we will be discussing here. But it's obviously more about behavior. It is about collective stories. It is about how we are creating some new kind of ways of understanding and behaving with water. But before we move on, I want to show you one film. And Hitesh, can we play the film? So what I want you to see and take away from the film, this film is a film from Kenya in Africa. But when you see this film, you will see there are realities, there are parallels that are common to us. So water is not just something that is for us in this country, but the emotion and how we are behaving, how we are feeling this water bankruptcy. And because we're talking about that nexus, that health, how it is gender, health, how it's coming together. So you will see how that beautifully is coming through in this film.
Mambo ya hali ya anga imebadilika. Zamani mvua ilikuwa inanyesha, tulikuwa tunakunywa maziwa, tulikuwa tunapata kila kitu kwa urahisi. Sasa sasa hivi maisha ni ngumu ya sasa hivi, si vile ilikuwa zamani. Shida ya maji hapa ndio shida kubwa sana. Hapa tunaenda kuchota kwa laga. Alafu tena ni ile unashimba ile mrefu kabisa ambayo watu 4 watu 5. Sasa hapa wanajima na mikono. Inakaa kama hizi balls ambayo watu wanajima ile gari nyingine. Sasa kwa sababu hatuna maji mengine tunakunywa kwa neema.
Biar terkena bukan kerja bapa. Weekend juga no terlalu nanti. Mau apa ingat? Weekend tu kerja kerja, weekend tu yang dah betul belum minta kerja kerja lah. Ini biar kau kerja ni. Ya aku cuma kalau katakan ide aku tertolak itu akan jadi na, jangan nak apa na. Ada tu baru aku jangan ada apa dulu.
Wamama wengi wanapoteza mimba kwa sababu ya ujauzito yao. Kubeba maji kwa umbali, kujenga nyumba ya mbuzi, kujenga fence, kujenga nini, ni wamama ndio wanafanya. Anak-anak makan kapalnya kitu la kuche, au kia adia awachat. Ana aku ni kajum borlogu. Ya masuk di guna apa bara, hatu dia bakal begini. Aku bagian dia bakal lagi besar. Arang lah dia kan ada di mana begini. Tak kasih sisiak ada juga di kalau. Sama sih lebih tinggi itu tiba kepala, apa dia? Karena itu lo kalau nggak rancang itu tuh ya kan.
Teman-teman apa lo nanti. Ayo nak lebih kayak kan dulu kan nak apa nanti nanti nak
So what you saw was the story of a pregnant Kenyan mother, Esther LR, who walks over 2 hours a day to reach a water source and then carries 20-liter jerry cans all the way back home. And if you see the film where she's talking about how water has also affected her health outcomes, how it had led to a miscarriage, how women are facing the brunt. And I was in a previous, attending another panel just before that where there was a chat of gender. And if we look at that, when you talk about water and specifically all kind of climate effects that are happening, women are at the, heart of bearing it. They bear the brunt of all of these changes, the causalities and the burden of it, and also the burden of managing that water lies with that woman, right? So these patterns, these things, the drought, all of this is going to stay, right? And water being something which is it's a finite thing, but we don't see it as finite, we see it as infinite, right? And I think that's where the stories and things come in. But before that, we saw that how there is a cusp of different information that is happening and different areas that get affected because of that one, common thing called water. So when it comes to food systems, agriculture, how do you see this stress, this, connection and this relationship playing out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if we see overall the global water systems, and agriculture as a sector sits right at the center of the story. And statistics clearly talks about that globally 70% of the fresh water is utilized in agriculture. In India, it is 80 to 90% of the fresh water is utilized in agriculture. So this is a sector which is having two phases. One, I think it itself is having the vulnerability to grow the food systems, but also like emissions come out of the sector. But this is also the sector which is the promising sector which can actually done it well. I think the ability to the recharge from the bankruptcy to resilience also I think will be like much more better. I'd like to I think also add like 2-3 data points, right? One is groundwater utilization in agriculture today is very, very high. If we see, I think if you know how much of groundwater in India utilized, around 240 billion cubic meter. Now how much actually goes from that groundwater, 87% goes to the agriculture sector.
Wow.
So the finite and infinite resources, right? Those something we need to know that not only the surface water, actually 87% of the available groundwater is again used by the agriculture sector. The other second data point today, this causal factor is our cropping pattern. Whatever the farmers grow today is completely misaligned to the agroecology. आप सभी लोगों को पता है, right? Areas which should not be growing rice and wheat, sugarcane, Marathwada, dry region, people are growing sugarcane, cotton, which is again water intensive crops, right? So this is where again the misalignment is happening. Why are you growing rice and wheat where it is not required? Someone can grow, you do other crops which can actually be in a soil, lesser soil moisture. And the third part of I think this entire nuance is the incentivization, like the governance, like overall structure today in multiple, on the top of the climate vulnerability, the incentivization also is not there. I'm growing crops where the there is no control over like I think withdrawal, using of the pump, right? So there is no financial incentive also for the farmer to shift to the right pattern. So these are some of the I think nuanced challenges where it's the entire bigger sector where 50% of the work population of a country like India is engaged, but the vulnerability of I think the challenges of I think the water, groundwater are something I think need to literally I think of from a place-based and landscape-based approach.
So what you're saying, Debaranjan, is that the bankruptcy that we are facing now is also getting aggravated by the practices in the agriculture sector.
Absolutely.
And if one way to look at the practices are because they don't know what to do, or is it something else?
I'll say like I think again both. I think people somehow know. The problem is it is driven by the economics, and we're discussing this.
Right.
Any behavioral change, a financial incentive is a very critical trigger to the behavioral change. Today, a lot of this I think water intensive crops, there is an assured market, there is an assured buyer. That's the reason in Marathwada they are growing sugarcane because they know that there is a predictability of the price and there is a sugarcane factory which will do that. I do not need to do anything else. Same with rice. There is someone that will go take to the mandi, I'll get the money because MSP is there. Today that financial incentive is so strong that the behavioral change is very difficult to see. It's not that they do not know. Yes, I think there are ways to solve, and I think hyperlocal information can be provided, but we can't do it only by providing that information can solve. We need to think both. Right information, hyperlocal advisory, but also some market facing structure we need to create so that when I shift, I don't need to worry I think from the previous crop which I shifted there.
Yeah, and also I think when we talk about water bankruptcy, again, vulnerable communities, people who are at a certain economic strata, they are the ones who are most affected. So Swapnil, when you work closely with the communities, right? And what does this look like, that bankruptcy looking like when you look from the community lens, and how everyday water behaviors are also shaping this bankruptcy?
So I'll give you two examples. So I'll take you to Dindori. Have you been to Dindori? So Dindori is inhabited by Baiga tribes. So Baiga tribes ka tendency hota, they will only drink from springs. So they will live near the springs and they will try to drink from springs. Now imagine with the changing hydrology and everything, the springs are drying up. So then what happens to these marginalized communities? They actually are now have to go farther and farther, and then they cannot live in the places they are used to living, right? So then water bankruptcy means, years of their habitations are now completely deserted, right? And then on the other side, I'll take you to another village where we have like multi-village schemes, right? So, water is coming 55 liters, 60 liters per person per day people are drinking, but because O&M issues are there, one fine day there is no water in the tap. And then what has happened because of usage of taps, we have forgotten about our alternative resources because water is coming from someplace else. So then bankruptcy is, what do you do during those summer days, during those days when pipes are broken or the motor is gone, and then people don't know. Their whole system is, gets disrupted. So we see both. And the interesting thing is that in both cases, the resilience then comes from the people themselves.
Right.
So like in case of multi-village schemes, the village people figuring out how to take care of this system that has been put in. And in case of Dindori, the tribes, the marginalized populations, they themselves figuring out how do they rejuvenate the springs, how do they create, water conservation methodologies that they have never practiced, but was in their traditions, right? They actually worship water, right? So, that's what we are seeing, that although, bankruptcy can happen, but actually the answer lies somewhere in the rituals, traditions and behaviors.
And the practices that you're talking about with the community. That's interesting because see, there's one lens where you're looking at from a very sectoral thing, that there is water that's getting used, a lot of water gets used in agriculture. Then there is water, habits that are shaping or creating those barriers with communities. But Manjusha, coming to you, where you look at innovation, right? You look at when we talk about innovation and system design and water circularity, what are the biggest barriers when you're looking at designing for solutions for this, right? Where water, as we all are looking at, and that the perception of water being infinite, right? And I just want to add one thing to it, that we all, when we say water, water is a very visual thing, right? आज तक हम लोगों ने सबने देखा है, अर्थ का फोटो देखते हैं तो you see more water in it. The data point, 72% of Earth's surface is water. That's shaping public perception, that's shaping public memory, because the way we look at water is shaped by these visuals, these narratives that are there. But we are in a very different age where and the thing that there is only 3% water which is potable. Now, this data point and that data point, that doesn't sit in a public's mind. Public sees पानी है तो मुझे क्यों मना किया जा रहा है पानी इस तरह से use करने के लिए, because ये मेरा livelihood है, because there are a lot of things which are going to be there. In all of that, how do you feel, how do you see this, innovation and systems coming together?
So I'll just start with a narrative where both electricity and water are something which we consume on a daily basis. But we see one service as a commodity and the other service as something which is a resource. And the utilization also very much dependent on that particular aspect, where electricity units are being monitored on a monthly basis so as to reduce the consumption because you need to pay the next month. But when it comes to water, you see it as a resource which is unlimited and you don't have a metrics to monitor that. That is where metering systems is very essential in the scenarios like this, right from urban areas and also tier 2, tier 3. When it comes to urban areas, if I have to talk about, for example, Hyderabad or Bangalore or Chennai, the water is being transported from a distant area. For Hyderabad, the water is coming from 100 kilometers. For Delhi, the water is coming from 50. And for Bangalore, it's coming from 200. So when the water is being transported, it's being cleaned, it's being recovered, recycled and supplied to your house, that also carries a value. But that value at this point in time is not attached to that. That is one particular scenario where we are trying to translate in behavioral change as well. Like when economies plays a major role when it comes to resources, that's when the behaviors keep changing. When it comes to innovation, this is what, like when you ask me about the barriers, I'll structure them into 3 different segments. One is the data, definitely. The data is very fragmented, if I have to brutally put it in that way. At a city scale, the data is very much fragmented. Even if any innovation has to take place in that particular area, it will only take place where the data is available. So it might only have in that particular ward or something of that sort. If I talk in terms of numbers, there are like 4,000 plus urban local bodies in India, and only less than 5% have a metering system. And also 40% of our water is being unaccounted, which we called as non-revenue water. So when everything is falling in place, data plays as a major role for any innovator to come in place and demonstrate their pilot. The second problem or the barrier which I see is the infrastructure which is there in the cities right now is back, we're still following a Victorian era, which is like 150 years old sewer system which we're still having. So that infrastructure is not actually having the capability or capacity for any innovation to come in place and demonstrate in that particular city for them to see results. The third barrier which we usually face is the finances, but to some extent, fortunately, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has schemes like startup challenges or Startup India. They are providing 20 lakh seed grant for any startup to demonstrate. And the other important thing which is being happening is startups are being associated with the urban local bodies. So that's one barrier being addressed these days. So we are working with multiple startups since last 3 years. And 3 years they have a lot of pilot demonstrations have happened. But the ultimate thing is like, whatever innovations are coming in place, they shouldn't stop at the pilot stage. It shouldn't be like a pilot after pilot. Every ULB you need to go demonstrate your solution. So there should be some mechanism or some kind of right combination of government, CSRs, and the communities come together, play a major role in this particular thing to scale up. So I'll be having one video here to demonstrate. Can someone play Media 1, please?
Not this, Hitesh, not this. Media 1.
So I wanted to show here a very stark reality of what happens after we flush in our washrooms. We have a tendency to flush and forget, right? But ultimately what's happening here is the water which we use eventually go and get drained into a river channels without even getting treated. Can you just play that? So that's the water which we flush in our washrooms, get ultimately sludge basically, yeah. So when we keep talking about water consumption, but eventually our fresh water is being at stake. So the way forward which we see is that the wastewater which is there needs to be recovered, recycled and reused, at least for the minuscule percentage whatever we consume. I mean, it should act as an offset for freshwater consumption is what the way forward is like.
So, very interesting what you said that, this sludge and I'll just, I was hoping to keep it for later, but I'm going to hop on to that now because it segues into that beautifully. So, one of the things that we saw and we have understood in our work in BBC Media Action is that when you talk and behaviorally, you talk about water because water is invisible.
Yeah.
It's visible, yet it is invisible because you don't put a price to it. You do not feel that, because it's there, it's omnipresent also, no? So you take it for granted. And I think that insight that when we talk about even climate, till people see it, how it's affecting, why it has landed in my backyard, why should I care for it? And what's in it for me, the behavior change doesn't happen. The thing that we are talking, whether in agriculture and on ground, we want certain practices to happen. people need to see what is it in it for me, whether it is communities, whether it is from innovation. I mean, from every angle, one has to see what's in that for me, and then perhaps there is a pathway to a change. So this is something, we will play a film for you, and I'll just give you a quick introduction to that. This is basically something that we did for urban sanitation, where the challenge, the donor told us that, can you make FSM, which is fecal sludge management, as common and as commonly spoken about like people talk about air pollution? So what do? How do you go about talking about something? And you're talking about fecal sludge management. Fecal sludge management is a very infrastructure loaded, it's an infrastructure heavy, conversation. And public ko nahi pata hai what is FSM, what is fecal sludge management. They only know that, and fecal sludge is also again something that nobody wants to engage with. I mean, that's exactly, you flush it, you forget it, right? But because it had no connection, it did not have any sort of personification, is what we realized, that, the fecal sludge needs to have a personification. We also have to create those connections, that why should you do certain things. So the thing was to build septic tanks in a certain way. The thing was to not desludge, into water and river bodies. And the pivoting, and the reason why for anybody to care about fecal sludge was that how the contamination, the water contamination, the groundwater contamination, your overhead water, rivers, everything gets contaminated because of this, what you saw just now, the fecal sludge being emptied out into these water bodies. Now, in that kind of a scenario, how do you create that communication? So what we did was a 3-state pilot in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu. And of course, also in Odisha, we did that. And that's where we realized, we came back with this, learning that, where do we pivot? But the first time when we went, we spoke only about that, it is fecal sludge, you should not do this, this is what is happening. The minute we pivoted to something that is dearer, and that's what I was talking about, when it is connecting to somebody and to something that is dear to you, which is water. The minute we showed people that, look, when when the pool leaves your home, either it can go and contaminate groundwater, it can come back to your food, it comes back into your plate, into your system, into your house, is where the connections were made. And this is something that we worked with the Ministry of Housing of Urban Affairs, and we had given it, we piloted to 9 states. They took it up to more than 13 states in, I think, about 13 languages. So this is, we call it the demon of Defeca. Okay, it's called Malasur. We'll just play a quick film for you then. Malasur. So, facts are marrows. If we had gone ahead and just said that 38,000, milliliters of sewage is going into your rivers, would it have moved people? Would have people made any connection? Would have people gone back to say, okay, let me look at making my septic tanks better? Can I ask our desludger, is he really not, emptying it out midway somewhere? Is it going to the, plant where it is supposed to go? And this film is one of the, outputs, but it was a complete 360-degree campaign which had many other things coming together to create this, behavior change. Going back to where we are talking about the stories and, bankruptcy is there, but we also are talking about how do we create this resilience, right? Water is one of the oldest habits, right? And civilizations have formed across the banks. Civilizations have evaporated across from the bank, right? And we talk about, and when we see that it's not just about how people consume water, it is about how people relate to water, how they store it, how they consume it, how they use it, and what stories or what personal connections people make with water. And this is a question to all of you, right? I mean, you all come from different, facets, innovation, working with communities. What role do you see media and communication playing in shifting the behaviors and creating new nudges, new norms? Any one of you can go ahead.
I can start.
Sure.
So there is a saying that data influence your mind, but story building actually influences your behavior. And there are many such examples, I think, in WAS, and so many examples are there. And when I see, I think, how can actually, from the context of, I think, communication, storytelling, how it influences the overall this water resilience there, right? One is the behavioral change, influences the behavioral change, right? How does it is for example, say for example, today I'm giving the example of the WAS long back, I think, which is the Swachh Bharat mission was happening, right? I think it was, no one was, all the states mandate were there, but no one was actually progressing. Mm-hmm. And when Parmeshwar and I actually took that, I think, the steps to take this to, complete the mission mode. One thing he did, I think, the leverage combination of data, but put into a visible mode of communication. So what he did is actually he started putting a ranking of visualization of, I think, all the key states. So what happened, Bihar comes out, I think, the highest number there. And that itself created a lot of political saying, I think, Andhra Pradesh saying, how can I be actually below Bihar? I think, because that visualization and communication created a movement from the government saying that, okay, I need to solve this. And this was a campaign not for the government. I'm saying this is largely influencing the even policy and fund allocation, saying that I am probably towards the bottom end, and what is restricting me to be, I think, on that, because there is something I can't be saying to my people that I'm actually a progressive state but below the end. So combination of data and showcasing it in a way where it influences the policy, fund allocation. This was one example which I recall, I think, which Parmeshwar and I think took that, I think, the entire efforts of saying the change in the was Swachh Bharat mission, I think, initiative.
Yeah, I mean, more stories have to be told, and stories have to be told at different levels, right? To the practitioners, to the organizations, to general public. Yeah. What do you think, Manjusha?
So I'll keep it short with different examples. Say, for the place where the water starts and the place where the water gets stored, the journey needs to be communicated well. We don't see how water is getting transported within the pipes. We don't see how it's being, what kind of efforts are going behind that as a general public. So we have done one small survey kind of a thing. We tested water at the source. We tested water during the transportation. We tested the water at the storage point at the household, basically. So the problem is existed in the way in which the public is storing the water. So since we have intermittent water supply, the water is not 24/7. There are some mechanisms for citizens to know how they need to store the water. So that's one thing. And the other thing I also observed is the chlorination aspect, which usually urban local bodies does. So they chlorinate the chlorinate at water source. The households which are there near to that water tankers will actually get good water with no odor, no smell. But the tail end is the problem. Tail end is the place where the chlorine get diluted. With the tail end, people will actually face the water smelly, water being.
Right.
The taste of the water changes, the color of the water changes. So the visual appeal of the water actually makes a difference. But at the same time, they don't have any other source to go on.
Yeah.
So that's where the public health risks are supposed to be integrated with what kind of intake they're having.
So what I hear from what you just said, Manjusha, it's also, there's a lot of technical aspect to it.
Yes.
The reason whys are very technical, but to the common man, that has to be communicated.
True.
In a language that they are able to understand. Because I feel a lot of times in these rooms when we all come together, we become an echo chamber. We become an echo chamber because we talk the language, we talk the technical terms, we talk the jargons, because we are day in and out breathing that. We are very used to, that. But the minute you go to the public, you step outside of this, and the person who is laying food downstairs, and if you were to go and talk to that person, this conversation will have no meaning.
Exactly.
And I think that's my question to you, Swapnil, where you see that storytelling can shift how people think about water.
So I feel this is more of a behavior game rather than a technology game, right? So how do you make this a behavior game is then you have won the battle. So for example, so I will talk about few tools that we have actually used in communication that has helped us achieve good results. So हम गांव में जाते थे, we will make infrastructure and then we will realize people don't use it. Yeah, this is a common issue. And then we started realizing that from day one, if you have made it their problem, then the solution that they design, they will always own it, right? And that's a very difficult thing to do. So one of the standard operating process that we follow is what we call village water map, right? So this is the whole community gets together and then they make the map of the whole village in terms of water. So where is water coming from and where is it going? So you have supply and then you have water outflow.
Right.
And just by doing so, what we are realizing is that we are able to involve communities in designing their own solutions. And then when you provide them, they are able to sustain them better because now solutions are coming from them.
Correct.
The other piece what we realized came from water contamination challenges. So there are all sorts of challenges. You go to West Bengal, you go to Bihar, there is arsenic. You go to Chhattisgarh, Odisha, there is fluoride, and there is nitrate, there is bacteriological. It's very difficult. Have you seen these field testing kits? आपने देखी है FTKs जो होते हैं, उसमें color change होता है. So what we realize that simple tool, if we do it in front of people,
Right.
otherwise what will happen? We will mark a resource as a cross saying it's an arsenic resource. People
has
will
no meaning.
forget and they will start drinking from it. But what we realized is that if this is done in front of them, it remains in their mind. And every time they will use, it will hit them. And then slowly they will stop using it. So this became another SOP for us, that we will actually do it in. So the idea is to make this a part of their workflow, part of their daily water flow, कि कहाँ से ला रहे हैं, कैसे use कर रहे हैं. So I feel it is indeed, we can use technology for water testing, but it has to create that nudge. And similarly, water level testing. So suppose we are doing any water recharge activity, how will people know that it is benefiting them?
Correct.
By simply making them test the water level before and after. Once they figure out that this helps them, they will start doing it on their own. So in villages we have seen where agricultural water use fights with drinking water use. People are now using drip irrigation so that their water levels in their hand pumps don't go down because of overuse.
Correct.
So I feel communication, indeed this is a communication game. How do we make it usable for people is something that we should innovate on.
Totally. And I think till the time the benefits are not spoken, the benefits are not shown, it's not a vivid demonstration. Sometimes it is demonstration. You know, you're reminding me of like when we were looking at a very different challenge, not water, but we were talking about in Bihar, diarrhea. Now, how do we tell mothers what to do? Diarrhea management is a very simple thing. But to be able to do that, we created a diarrhea doll, where we just did a simple demonstration by showing ki what happens, पानी body में गया बच्चे के और पानी निकल जाने से बच्चे को क्या तकलीफ हो रही है. So, you know, there are different things, and that's where storytelling, behavior change, communication comes and plays a role. And, you know, of course, that's the takeaway for me is that, you know, if we want to change the course, data and technology alone is not enough, right? Because you don't protect a data, you protect what you love, and love begins with a story. And thank you for being here. I think we have running low on time, but I'm opening it up to the lovely audiences. I hope you have not fallen asleep and we have kept you, not given you lorries as you were talking about. So if you have any questions, please.
What Mr. Swapnil has said, I was in the government, and Atal Bhujal Yojana was implemented and I was the regional officer of whole of the South Haryana. So that point where the test was done in front of the villagers by changing the colors, definitely it made the difference among the behavior of the people. And what the Haryana government has also done while implementing the Atal Bhujal Yojana, we put a data for individual village. I was a member of that committee. 2020 का जो डाटा था हमने विलेज वाइज को बता दिया भाई इतना मीटर नीचे आपका. देन जब ये इम्प्लीमेंट हुआ प्रोग्राम 22 में 23 में, तो हमने वो क्योंकि किट डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किया, गांव में जाके डिस्ट्रीब्यूट नहीं किया, उनके सामने मेजर किया मेन पॉइंट से और उसको एवरेज करके वो डाटा डाल दिया उसमें. तो जो मान लीजिए सपोज करो 15 मीटर पे था और अब वो 17-18 मीटर हो गया, तो क्लियरली उनको पता चला भी हाँ ये तो सही कह रहे हैं. 1 महीना 2 महीना 4 महीना पहले जब आए थे जब ये बता रहे थे और अब हमारे सामने इतना हो रहा है. तो जो सॉल्यूशन वाली बात है वो ऑटोमेटिकली लोगों से ही आनी शुरू हो जाती है. और जो ये मैपिंग वाला भी हमने लोगों से ही पूछा भी तुम्हारे सोर्सेज कहाँ पर है, कि जी 5 पॉइंट वहाँ होते थे, उनमें से 2 तो फलाने ने वो कर लिए, एक में बारात घर बना दिया, एक में ये कर दिया, एक में वो कर दिया. ऐसे ही अपना ट्यूबवेल्स का ओपन वेल्स का था. तो ये चीज़ें डेफिनेटली कम्युनिटी का जब की तरफ से जब रेस्पॉन्स आता है तो उसका इम्पैक्ट ज़्यादा आता है बजाय जब गवर्नमेंट या कोई इंडिविजुअल इंस्टीट्यूशन उसको फोर्स करती है. आई एग्री विद दैट. एंड रिगार्डिंग आई थिंक योर वीडियो कि वो डायरेक्ट डाल रहे हैं उसमें, वो बड़ा अच्छा कर रहे हैं मैडम. सरकार के जो एसटीपी वो चलते ही नहीं, दे आर अननेसेसरली बिलिंग दी गेटिंग इट फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट. It's a really challenging issue. Yeah, her fact, I have been regional officer pollution control board. I have seen it with my naked eyes. जब हमारी कार का उनको पता चल जाता था गेट पे कि भाई सरकार का तंत्र आ रहा है, then their system works, start working. Otherwise ये तो बिल्कुल ऐसी raw bypass होते हैं.
फिर अकाउंटेबिलिटी तभी हो पाएगी सरकार की भी जब जनता भी डिमांड करेगी.
Public.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Very well
totally,
said,
totally. Thank you for being such a lovely audience, and I will just request my colleague Nima to hand over these lovely little plants to the very patient co-storytellers. And then we will just pose for one picture also.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Nima, come.
Thank you, Manjusha. Thank you.
This feels like the shadi wala picture. Right? Break a pose and stop. Yes, you can all come together.